So we have completed radiation and we have completed the land surface process parameterization. The next in the sequence was PBL parameterization, but since we have discussed that in your previous semester, and most of you, I hope you have got the PowerPoint because I see that now all of you are not replying to my WhatsApp message. Only some of you confirm that yes, you have the PowerPoint, but all of you did not confirm. So I think when I give a message, then all of you are supposed to reply that, right? Because I should know the situation in the class, right? So assuming that all of you have got the PowerPoint, and even if somebody does not have the PowerPoint, they can always get it from his friend's classmate. So PBL, we are not discussing. If you have any question, then definitely we shall discuss about that. And next after PBL is the cumulus parameterization, okay, which we are starting today. I'm hoping to finish this topic in at least 2 lectures, but it may take more. I don't know, maybe 3 lectures also, because today also we have lost almost half an hour. We have lost by discussing these things. So, cumulus parameterization, as you have heard, is one of the most important physical processes now, both in the atmosphere as well as in the model, because convection is the key things which drives everything. Of course, solar radiation is there, but after solar radiation, the entire uh, gimmick of the clouds, condensation, rainfall, etc., takes place because of the convection, right? So, convection parameterization also called the cumulus parameterization because cumulus is the name of the cloud that you know, convective cloud, right? So, its synonym is that convective parameterization or parameterization of convection or cumulus convection or cumulus parameterization, all those things. Now, the same thing. So, we are going to talk about the cumulus parameterization, and especially in the tropics is very, very important because in tropics, most of the processes are dominated by convection, right? So, for now, tropics convection parameterization is very, very important. And because of the uncertainty in the convection parameterization, the clouds may not form at the right place at the right time, and so a lot of problems can occur in the model. Okay, so now let's discuss about what is this cumulus parameterization. Now, overall, in my lectures on this, I'll talk about what is cumulus parameterization, parameterization of shallow clouds, parameterization of deep clouds. Then among the deep clouds, there are two prominent type of parameterizations used by the people. One is called the co-type cumulus parameterization. Another is the Arakawa-Seward cumulus parameterization. These are the basic two parameterizations, but then there are many variants of these two parameterizations which people have developed according to their own requirement criteria, and there are tens or 15s, I think, total cumulus parameterization schemes existing as on today. Even in the model also, if you look at the WRF model, there are, I think, 10 options or at least 7, 8 options are there for cumulus parameterization. You can choose what scheme you want to use, but most of them are basically either now developed based on the co-type scheme, co-scheme, which is called the co-type scheme, or the Arakawa-Seward scheme. So these are the two schemes we shall discuss here in this class in detail, and then some results of these two schemes also we shall discuss. Okay. So now this is a very popular diagram. I don't know whether I had shown you this diagram earlier before, but this diagram, let me also open my laser pointer. Okay. So what it is showing is a typical grid box of a model. Okay, this is typically a grid box of the model. And within that grid box can be of any size. Now, if it is a large scale model, earlier in olden days, it used to be say 100 kilometer or even more than that, right? So it can have a 100 kilometer by 100 kilometer size, or if it is a finer resolution, then we can have 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer size, or if it is even finer than that, if you have a very good computer time, then we can have say 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer type. But typically in a large scale model, earlier we used to have about 100 kilometer grid box, about 1 degree by 1 degree lat long. So in about 100 kilometer by 100 kilometer grid box, you can imagine there may be many types of clouds, right? Many types of clouds present. Some can be very matured and deep clouds, like cumulonimbus cloud represented here. Whenever there is an anvil, that means there is a cumulonimbus cloud, right? Then there can be a cloud which is still in the growing phase. There can be a cloud which is just formed, a small cloud, right? So all types of clouds, a spectrum of cloud size from shallowest to deepest cloud type can occur within a grid box. And also these clouds can be in different stages of their life cycle, right? Because some cloud may be in the formative stage, some cloud may be in the matured stage, some cloud may be in dissipating stage, right? You know the three stages of cumulonimbus cloud, right? Convective clouds: formation, formative stage, matured stage, and dissipation stage. So all these kinds of clouds in different stages of their life cycle and different size can occur within a grid box. Okay. Now the question is that because the size of this grid box, say, typically used to be say 100 kilometer, but the size of the individual cumulus cell is much less. You know that what is the typical scale of a cumulus cloud? We have discussed about that in previous semester. What is the typical horizontal scale of a cumulus cloud? Can somebody tell?
So 1 kilometer.
Typical scale is considered what 1 to 10 kilometer. Okay, typical scale of it, because 1 kilometer also just one cell can be 1 kilometer, but typically there can be a cumulonimbus which base can be about 10 kilometer, right? But if they are clustered together, then they become mesoscale convective system, MCS, that you might have studied in some other course. Mesoscale convective systems can have much larger scale. It can be 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer also. But an individual cumulus cloud, a convective cloud, is supposed to have a scale of about 1 to 10 kilometer. Okay. So if the size of the grid box is about 100 kilometer and the size of the cloud is about 1 to 10 kilometer, then obviously from the observation, because you know that by now, that your observations in the model are available at these grid points of the corner of this grid box, right? There are the four corners of this grid box, and your observations are available only at these four corners of the grid points, right? After doing all these, data acquisition, data quality control, data assimilation from all sources, satellite, blah blah blah, whatever sources that you have studied so far of the data, those data are eventually available only at the grid points, isn't it? So your grid points, that means these are the four grid points of this grid box. So data is available only at these grid points, whereas your process, the clouds, are within that grid point. So obviously these four data points will not be able to resolve the process of the clouds, which are smaller in size than this grid box, right? But nevertheless, you have to resolve. You have to find out what is the impact of this cloud on the overall atmosphere, in the environment, right? So that means somehow you should be able to relate the properties of this cloud, right, with that of the large scale variables. Variables which are available at these points are called the large scale variables, right? So whereas the clouds are the cloud scale, obviously. So you don't have the measurement at the cloud scale normally, because cloud scale measurement requires very fine resolution observations generally, which we do not have. And since we nowadays, we run, even if we run a regional model covering all of India, now that you have seen that it becomes about how much 60 kilometer by say 40 kilometer. That was a very large square, large area, or 2400 square kilometer area, right? Or even more than that sometimes. So we cannot afford to have such a final scale resolution of the observations. Of course, satellites nowadays are able to provide very fine resolutions. Even radars are also able to provide fine resolution. But still, no, there are many processes which are much smaller in the scale, within the scale, which cannot be resolved directly. And such processes we call as sub-grid scale process, right? Sub-grid scale process. That means their scale is lesser than the typical grid scale of the model. So they are called the sub-grid scale process. And in the sub-grid scale process, all those small physical processes occur, can come, right? For example, your eddies, right? You know that eddies are there. The turbulence, you know that the turbulence are there in the boundary layer in the atmosphere, right? So eddies, turbulence, right? These small clouds, these things are there which cannot be resolved by the large scale observations. So you have to somehow find out some statistical relationship between these subcritical processes and the large scale processes. Okay. So this statistical relationship between subcritical process and the large scale process is called the parameterization, right? This is what we call the parameterization. When you say cumulus parameterization or radiation parameterization, right? Or PBL parameterization, we call it parameterization because we are trying to parameterize it. No, because we cannot have the observations for that scale. So we try to just find out a statistical relationship, right? And radiation, for example, occurs at micron scale, right? Even tiny cloud droplets, their scale is not of the size of micron. So they have to be parameterized. We cannot directly resolve them. There are unresolved physical processes. So they have to be parameterized. So this is what is called the cumulus parameterization. So in this diagram, basically, this is just illustration. This is illustrating a boundary layer. Boundary layer. And the clouds occur at the top of the boundary layer. Generally, clouds occur at the top of the boundary layer, unless it descends down to the Earth's surface, which is called the fall. But otherwise, typical base of the cloud is at the boundary layer. So at the top of the boundary layer, the clouds occur, and this is a typical grid box of the large scale model. Okay, and within the clouds, of course, if it is a matured cloud, well-developed cloud, then I have got the updrafts, cloud base mass flux from the cloud base, and then at some point in the middle of the cloud depth, there is a downdraft, right, which finally descends down to the surface and diverges out. Right? So we have got these are the typical processes. So in a cumulus parameterization, physically all these things have to be accounted for, right? So this is what I have just explained to you now in words that the horizontal scale of individual cumulus cloud is of the order of 0.1 to 10 kilometer, but the grid lengths of synoptic forecast models are much greater than the size of the individual cumulus clouds. Therefore, it becomes totally impracticable to resolve them in a numerical model of large-scale circulation. Instead, the collective influence of clouds within a larger area is formulated or parameterized in terms of the large-scale environmental variables, and this is called the cumulus parameterization. Okay, got it? The definition?
Yes, sir.
Good, very good.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, in brief, parameterization is to create relationship between two physical phenomena of different scales. Right. That is what is called the parameterization, actually. Now, this is a typical, illustration of a cumulonimbus cloud that you already know. That we have already just now discussed that there are updrafts from the cloud base, also called the cloud base mass flux. Updrafts going up, and as it goes up, it collects water droplets, and then becomes cooler and cooler, and also heavier and heavier. So at some point, it can no longer rise up because of its buoyancy, and so this started descending down, and that's called the downdraft horizontal level. From that level, the downdraft starts, and then it comes down, and then diverges around the Earth's surface because it cannot penetrate the ground. So that is the typical cool air or chill air that we encounter whenever there is a cumulonimbus passing over our head, right? A thunderstorm will be passing over us, and we experience typical downdraft, cool air because of the downdraft, right? Then from the top of the cloud, you have got the detrainment. Now the one which takes the cloud properties to outside environment is called the detrainment. And the environmental properties, when it is mixed up with the cloud, then we call the entrainment. So from the sides or side wall of the clouds, we have got lateral entrainment and lateral detrainment, right? You have heard of the word entrainment. Entrainment is the mixing of the surrounding air with that of the cloud air, right? That is the entrainment, right? Surrounding airs are eroded, are continuously eroding the wall of the cloud or side of the cloud, right? And similarly, the cloud properties are continuously going out also, right? Laterally as well as from the top. But major is from the top, which is called the determinant, cloud top determinant. And the anvil that you see of the cumulonimbus cloud, the hat, right, at the top of the cumulonimbus cloud, that is basically caused because of the cloud top determinant, right? Cloud top determinant. So from the boundary layer, this is a typical boundary layer, also called the mixed layer. Now, and the size of the cloud is about 0.1 to 10 kilometers approximately horizontally, right? So cloud base is occurring at the top of the mixed layer. So all these boundary layer fluctuate because of the thermals which are now rising up due to the strong heating of the Earth's surface because of this solar radiation. They're rising up and carrying moisture upward, and as it goes up, it becomes cool and condense, right? And then the clouds form at the base. So there is a continuous pumping of the moist air from the base of the cloud, and that's called the cloud base mass flux. Right? It's called the cloud base mass flux, which is a continuous pumping of the moist air because of the rising thermals, right, which is moist, okay, and warm. So cloud base mass flux, okay, and because of this, rising motion, since the mass is rising up, so as per the law of conservation of mass, somewhere it also must descend, right? It must sink also, right? Otherwise, law of conservation of mass will not be satisfied; it will be violated, right? So, of course, downdraft, part of the mass which goes up, comes down as a downdraft, but that is not sufficient to compensate the entire mass which is rising up, and so to compensate that, from outside the cloud also we have got the subsidence here, called the compensating subsidence. This compensating subsidence is taking place outside the cloud, from this side as well as that side also. It can take place from all sides of the surrounding the cloud. So this is called the compensating subsidence. So there is a upward motion here within the cloud, and part of it is compensated by the downdraft, but majority of it is compensated by the compensating subsidence or sinking motion which is taking place outside the cloud. So what happens is, because of this compensating subsidence, whenever there is a subsidence, what will happen? There will be a warming, right? When there is a subsidence, there will be a warming. Subsidence leads to warming, okay, and rising motion leads to cooling, right? So there is a warming because of the compensating subsidence, and there are many other dynamical processes which are taking place because there is a prevailing wind also which is continuously pushing the system to move around, right? So eventually, this cloud will be guided by the steering force, which is again dictated by these advection processes surrounding air, air motion, etc., etc. But then, as it is pushed, suppose if the air is from this side to that side, like westerly air, then the system will be pushed from west to east, right? So as this is pushed, say from this side, then what will happen is that all the air from this side will be also pushed. So this will go up, right? And as air goes up, then this part also moves forward, right? So this part again, new clouds will form in this part, right? And this part, once it becomes mature, then it starts dying or dissipating. So this part start dissipating, and new clouds form here, and like that, there is a continuous chain of formation, dissipation, and the progression on the movement of the system, right? Propagation of the system. So this is what is the typical life cycle of the cumulonimbus cloud. And therefore, this is what occurs in the nature, right? Generally, this is what occurs in the nature. So all these natural processes, the natural physical processes, we are supposed to account into the model, right? Take into account in the model, considered in the model mathematically, physically, or whatever, right? So a good cumulus parameterization scheme is supposed to take into account all the physical processes, right? But typically, the goal or the objective of the cumulus parameterization are supposed to be three, right? Typically, the aim of the cumulus parameterization are supposed to be three, in a gross sense, because when we talk about the model or atmosphere is a very big system, right? A complete system in which all kinds of things occur, right? So, and as you know, this cumulus convection, cumulus parameterization is just one of the several physical processes, right? So, what is happening? Now, clouds are forming. I mean, if you just look at the life now, whether it is human life or these kind of physical processes, physical phenomena, life of the physical phenomena, what is happening, in a gross sense, what is happening that all these clouds, because they are forming due to the rising of the thermals, which contain warm, moist air, right? So clouds are warmer than the surrounding environment, right? And that's why they're buoyant, otherwise they will not be buoyant. So the clouds are generally considered to be the source of heat because they are rising thermals, warm cloud air mass. And when the clouds die out, when the clouds dissipate, then eventually what they will do, they will mix up their air, warm, moist air, with the surrounding environmental air, right? So the final net effect of the cloud is to warm and moisture the surrounding air. Whatever moisture is carrying up, it eventually after it is dissipated, the moisture is distributed in the surrounding air at all these vertical levels. So that is one of the important things which cloud do to the surrounding air, that it warms and moistures this surrounding air. So in a gross sense, one of the objective of the cumulus parameterization is to compute how much the convection or convective cloud has warmed the surrounding air in a typical grid box, in a typical time step of the model. Suppose if the model time step is 1 minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, sometimes also in terms of seconds, it is a very fine scale model. So in a typical time step of the model, how much the convective clouds have warmed and moistened the surrounding air. Okay, so that is number one task, right, to be obtained from the cumulus parameterization scheme, right? Now, number two task is that eventually when this cumulonimbus cloud form, they also precipitate out, right? They have got precipitation both from the base of the cloud as well as from the anvil, right? From the anvil of the cloud also we have got the precipitation, rainfall. But there are two different types of precipitation. These precipitation which occurs one directly from the base of the cloud and the one which occurs from the anvil are distinctly different precipitation. Okay, and you might have heard about this precipitation which comes directly from the base of the cloud is called the convective precipitation. This is called the convective precipitation. That you might have noticed that now, in the pre-monsoon season there is a shower, right? Very big raindrops suddenly falling down, and just for a very few interval of time, right? And it will just pass away, passing shower, right? So that is called the convective precipitation. But when this cloud is so thick and so big, like when it forms the mesoscale convective system, then from the anvil continuously rainfall can keep occurring, right? Continuous rainfall can keep occurring from the anvil of the cloud. And this is called the stratiform precipitation because the anvils are stratiform clouds, stratiform and safe. They're not like the convective cloud here. Anvils are stratiform and safe. So the precipitation which occurs from the anvil of the cloud from all sides, anvil can be from all sides, right? So this anvil precipitation is called the stratiform precipitation, and this is called the convective precipitation. They're very important, right? The convective precipitation can be easily distinguished from the stratiform precipitation in the sense that the rate of precipitation, convective precipitation, or the intensity of convective precipitation, the millimeter per hour, is much larger than the rate of the non-convective precipitation or stratiform precipitation, right? And in the model, sometimes there is also a challenge to partition or to calculate how much is the convective precipitation and how much is the large-scale precipitation or stratiform precipitation. And we do that in the model. Calculate convective precipitation kitna hai or large-scale precipitation kitna hai, and then we sum up to get the total precipitation, because in a grid box, eventually for the general public, what is important is the total precipitation. For a scientist, it is important to know how much is convective or how much is non-convective for many reasons. But for a general public, all he wants to know is that how much is the total precipitation. So you will find in the WRF model also, you find two types of precipitation, convective and non-convective. And to get the total precipitation, you have to sum up the two things to get the total precipitation. Okay. Are you all hearing me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Good, very good.
Yes, sir.
All right. So as I said in the beginning, this is one of the very important processes in the atmosphere, and typically, especially for the tropics, is very important. And why it is important? Because most of the rainfall in tropics occurs from cumulus cloud. Okay, number one. Number two, the convective clouds, because of their strong updrafts and downdrafts, they transport mass, heat, moisture, and momentum, as well as vorticity from lower to the upper troposphere. Right. Number three, clouds warm up the surrounding environment by releasing latent heat of condensation. Right. As I said, it warms up the surrounding environment. Okay. Number four, the heat so generated is a potential source of energy for the development and intensification of tropical systems. Now, all these cyclones, etc., that massive systems that form in the atmosphere, all their basic thing, the basic criteria, reason is a convection. Right? So they are the potential source of energy for the development and intensification of the tropical system, whether it is a depression, whether it is a cyclone, of course, thunderstorms obviously are also there. Whether it's tornado, whatever, nor'wester, whatever you think about. The basic, they are the potential source of this. Now, convection is the potential source of the development of these tropical systems. The release of latent heat in an organized deep cumulus convection also provides significant contribution to the intensity of monsoon and energetics of the global circulation. See, our entire monsoon, which is so important for India and also many countries, entire monsoon system is driven by the convection. Right? Had there been no convection, there would be no monsoon. Right? And of course, there are many other things which also regulate the monsoon, control the monsoon. Geographical factors also control the monsoon, for that you know. But if there is no convection, there is no monsoon. Right? So this is one of the major cause. Now let us see what is the typical effect of a convection. Let's say in tropics, rainfall of the order of 2 centimeters per day is quite a common thing, right? Very, very small amount. Having a rainfall of 2 centimeters per day is a very common thing, isn't it? Because typically, if you talk about the places like Cherrapunji, now where we have got how much rainfall? So, Shillong wala kaun hai? Rahul, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, kitna hota hai rainfall? You know, annual rainfall in Cherrapunji.
Goes around, sir. I don't know, sir. 400, I guess.
Well, per day, batao, per day. What is the record per day? Mausim Ram, Cherrapunji, per day. कितना होता है
नहीं
per day?
पता सर, अभी पर डे रिकॉर्ड सर
हाँ?
नहीं पता सर.
नहीं पता. अरे यार क्या तुम भी by now you should know it. You are studying atmospheric science and also living in Shillong, है ना? Meghalaya. That is the place where you have got the highest rainfall in the world. You know that? Do you know that? मेघालय में पूरे वर्ल्ड का सबसे ज्यादा रेनफॉल होता है. Don't you know
Yes.
that? And as I remember, I think I'm confusing between the unit, but the 1040 millimeter or centimeter is recorded in one day.
1040 millimeters, sir. A millimeter, sir.
Millimeter hoga.
Yes, sir. Everything goes around 400 to 700, sir.
So that is record in one day. So 1040 millimeter bhi hai, फिर भी it becomes 104 centimeter in a day, isn't it?
Yes.
Very, very 1040 millimeter in one day, it becomes how much? 104 centimeter, right? And वो मुंबई वाला rainfall तुम लोगों ने सुना होगा कहानी 2005 July 25th, that you have heard the Mumbai case, still
Yes, sir.
widely talked about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in one day, do you remember how much rainfall occurred in Mumbai in that typical day, 25th of July 2005? Almost 993 millimeter. 993 millimeter. Almost 99 centimeter almost, right? So much of rainfall. occurred in one day. So having a 2 centimeter of rainfall is just nothing. It's quite common, quite popular. But,
This year in July too. And this year on July 2, sir. 15.8 inches.
अब inches
Was-
तो खैर generally people talk in England inches वाला unit. हमारे यहाँ we talk about the metric systems, inches etc. I talk in England, British system हो गया हो. But so much of rainfall typically occurs over the Indian region in the tropics especially also. So we just let us say if there is a rainfall of just 1 centimeter per day, or if there is a rainfall of 2 centimeter per day, what is its consequence? Now let's see. So if there is a rainfall of 2 centimeter per day, to have the rainfall of 2 centimeter per day, how much moisture is required to be condensed? And calculations, you can calculate that in order to have 2 centimeter of rainfall per day, you have to have a condensation of 20 kilogram per meter square of water vapor over an atmospheric column of 1 square meter area. Right. In order to have 2 centimeter per day rainfall, 20 kilogram per meter square of water vapor will have to be condensed in a column of atmosphere of about 1 meter square area. So if that much of water vapor is condensed, how much latent heat will be released? Now, since the latent heat of condensation is 2.5 into 10⁶ joules per kilogram, so this much of rainfall per day will heat the atmosphere column by mW times LC, where mW is the mass of the water vapor condensed times the latent heat of condensation, and which comes to be 20 times this much, and which comes to be this much. 5 times 10⁷ joules per meter square per day. Heating will take place if 2 centimeter rainfall occurs over a point, over a location. Now, if this much heating is distributed uniformly over the entire atmospheric column of 1 square meter area, which mass is say P0 by G, which is about 10⁴ kilogram per meter square, and the average heating rate per unit mass of the air, we can calculate as Q by Cp is equal to LCM W divided by this one, and the calculation will come to be about 5 degrees centigrade per day. So what does it mean? If there is a rainfall of 2 centimeter per day, then it can heat the surrounding air by 5 degrees centigrade per day. That is a physical calculation, physically by law of physics. And we know that 2 centimeter to kuch bhi nahi hai. Kai guna zyada rainfall hota hai, right? More than 2 centimeter. So if there is a 10 centimeter rainfall, that means 5 times this, that means 5 times 25 degrees centigrade per day. During the monsoon season, rainfall rates of about 10 centimeter per day are not uncommon, right? So the associated heating rates due to latent heat release could be 25 degrees centigrade per day. लेकिन क्या ऐसा होता है? Have you ever noticed that the temperature rises in a day by 25 degrees centigrade just because of the rainfall, convective rainfall that occurs? It doesn't happen, right? I mean, temperature rises because of the solar heating, diurnal cycle of the heating, not because of the convective heating. This is because of the convective heating. So if this was the case, if this much of rainfall could heat that much of air, that much of temperature, and typically 10 centimeter rainfall is very common, can easily occur, and the atmosphere will be heated by 25 degrees centigrade per day. But that doesn't happen. We don't see that. If it happened, then none of us would be able to live here. So luckily that doesn't happen because there are many other processes which simultaneously keep taking place in the atmosphere. And those processes, they compensate, they balance the heating, and what we notice is much less than what would have occurred otherwise. For example, rather we see that when there is a convective cloud, when there is a thunderstorm, we have a cool atmosphere, we feel chill atmosphere, and that's because of the cold air which is coming by the downdraft. So that's just one process which is just compensated with the entire heating, right? So this is just emphasizing the importance of the convective rainfall, convective atmosphere, right? Convective clouds. I think I have a meeting at 3:30, and you also have a class at 3:30, right? So,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I could not cover much in this class today, but we have to continue in the next class. I thought at least half of the lecture I'll finish today, but looks like I'm explaining too much. So now I'm going to stop here today. It was only 3:30, and I have a meeting with one of those people, students. Okay, so I have to stop the meeting otherwise. So,
Okay, sir.
yeah,
Okay.
we'll continue from here. And so still I see that, no, sometimes people join late, but I see that, no, still attendance is still the same. No, rather 1% has decreased. I stop recording now. I don't know who will get to this. Asna, so you have got this today's recording.